podcast historically, and so last week, I believe somebody on Twitter, I believe her name is Polly, suggested that Ben and I debate on whether it's time to outgrow Chomsky. And so that's where, my position is absolutely, what took you so long? And Ben disagrees.
Excellent. All right. I have you perfectly up there, and then Ben is coming back. Oh, there he is. All right. Oh, wait, but of course Ben would bump the old one out of the way.
The what out of the way?
Oh, sorry. If you're not watching the stream right now, I'm basically just adjusting both of you so that it looks like you're on opposite sides, and I've got your names up on the screen and everything. It's a thing. It's nice and fancy. But because Ben logged off for 2 seconds, I have to now readjust it. But just give me 2 seconds, and
got it.
I will be right with you. Perfect. All right. Just let me do one last adjustment.
Can you give me the wait. What's the URL again so I can tell people?
Yeah, no worries. It's twitch.tv/thesurfstv.
Twitch.tv/ found it. But okay, I see now. Okay,
Okay, Ben Burgis versus Esha. And the topic is, should the left abandon Chomsky? All right, we're good to go. Okay,
Chomsky outgrow.
Oh, outgrow, sure.
Because abandon is like a totally different phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. I'll just change that at the top.
And then people are going to be like, oh, you can't cancel Chomsky, which is like a total straw man. So I just want to avoid it.
Yeah, no worries. Just give me 1 second. I'm just changing the title. Oh, and Ben, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself before I list the rules and everything?
Sure. My name is Ben Burgis. Wrote a book called Give Them an Argument, Logic for the Left, and more recently was one of 4 authors with Matt McManus, Marian Trejo, Conrad Hamilton, and an introduction by Slavoj Žižek of a book called Myth and Mayhem, a leftist critique of Jordan Peterson. I'm a co-host of the Dead Pundit Society podcast. I do a weekly segment on the Michael Brooks Show called The Debunk, and I am a columnist for Jacobin Magazine, which, according to some people I see on Twitter, means that I work for the CIA, which is kind of cool. I've been watching The Americans lately, so I like the idea of working for an intelligence agency. And I also do a column a couple times a month at Arc Digital Media. And at least for now, I have a job teaching philosophy at Georgia State University Perimeter College, although, of course, with the pandemic and budget cuts and everything, I literally have, since I'm on a year-to-year contract, I literally have no idea what's going on next year. So that's exciting.
And who amongst you is going to be starting? Did you guys determine that already?
We can do it randomly.
We left it open. If you want to do it randomly or you have a preference one way or the other, that's fine with me. It would, if it matters to you, whether you're going first at the beginning or last at the end, then that's fine with me. But it would make sense to me if you went first because you're the one who sort of has a positive case, right? Like, these are the respects in which the left should outgrow Chomsky.
I watched the entire Burgess v. Molyneux debate. It was painful, and I let Molyneux know how bad he was in that debate via Twitter.
Over the rules,
so I was just going to quickly do that. 1 sec, sorry, I'm just turning off the alert box. But thank you for the donation. I just don't want to interrupt the debaters when they're in the middle of saying what they're about to say. So everyone, basically how this is going to work is both parties are going to do 5-minute introductions, and then I'm going to basically let you guys go free flow for a little while. I'm going to stay outside of, interjecting unless it's just becoming a screaming, yelling head match, but I don't think that's going to be the case. So I don't think I'll need to do anything. So I'll basically just be here to make sure that you stay within the 5 minutes each for your intros. And then afterwards, we'll leave it for some audience questions. And then we can have 5-minute closing statements, if that works.
I thought what we talked about was we're going to do the 5-minute opening statements, 5-minute rebuttals, half an hour of everything else, then the 5-minute closing statements.
Oh, so you'd like everything to be concentrated in like 5-minute rebuttal back and forth?
Well, for an initial round, but then there would be the half an hour free for all,
Okay.
like free flowing exchange / questions from the chat, questions you would throw in, whatever.
Okay, so just to be clear, 5-minute intros each, and then 2 5-minute rebuttals.
No.
Back and forth.
Is that not what you remembered? Sorry, I should say.
We said 1 5-minute rebuttal.
Okay, then free flow.
Right,
Okay.
Right.
Okay, well that makes it easy.
Sorry. One round of us doing it, so 2 in that sense. But yeah.
All right, sounds great. Okay, well then at this point, I will open it up to you, Esha, for your 5-minute introduction.
Okay. Many of you say Chomsky opened your eyes to the distortions of the media and evils of the U.S. empire. Well, I posit that discovering leftism through Chomsky is a privilege. I found leftism as a child in India. I saw a girl who was forced to quit 5th grade because her family was so poor that they could not feed her. At age 12, she claimed she was getting married. Of course, marriage is a euphemism, and we all know what she was forced to do. So it is a privilege to be able to discover the evils of capitalism through reading Chomsky instead of seeing your friends being sold into child prostitution. And if there is one thing capitalism does is give money stolen from other people's labor and redistribute it to the powerful. And there are a lot more privileges of certainty for you. Every time you go to school, you know you're going to come home and there's a home. In Yemen, Syria, Iraq, people are not so lucky. Sometimes the U.S. might drone your house, or it might be bombed, and turning your whole family into rubble. So there is a difference in experiences for many people, between what they can imagine for themselves and what really happened. And that difference is often seen in Chomsky's works. So Chomsky is one of those armchair critics who sits on comfortably at his tenured professorship at the heart of the imperial core. He's full of critiques of any action taken by the mass. Says, for example, Chomsky says has no proper way to resist and fight against forces of capitalism or imperialism that he monotonously bores you guys with. So, for example, there was in 1967, Chomsky said that people should dodge their draft as a form of resistance. He got a letter from this guy named William X, who said if people were to just dodge their draft, they're just volunteering for prison at that point, and they're not helpful to anyone. What we need is real sabotage activities. Chomsky kind of mumbled that it was counterproductive, and he didn't actually know why, but that's basically what happened. He says that in Palestine, he says the BDS movement is a victory for Israeli propaganda, as if Israeli propaganda doesn't already claim victories on everything. So there is no proper way for the powerless to seize power that won't elicit Chomsky's scorn. Any successful revolution is either not real socialism or authoritarianism. I wish this were a parody, but in his book, he describes in his book on anarchy, 3 different successful spontaneous revolution projects. You want me to tell you what it is? Italy in 1919, Spain in 1936, and I kid you not, Germany in 1919. What do these 3 projects have in common? Well, to me, if real socialism means losing to Hitler, Mussolini, and Franco, I want no part of it. And right now, I know I'm going to make you jump, but Chomsky has typical liberal tendencies. Liberals are idealists. An idealist has a definition of socialism in his head which is divorced from all context. Every time they encounter a real-world example, they compare it with the ideal in their head, only to arrive at the predictable judgment that it is not real socialism and the revolution has been hijacked and destroyed. For Marxists, we understand that society has always been a giant class war, and we use the practice of historical materialism. Marxists look at all ideas through historical context and judging each action by their effects on the class struggle. They investigate a group of exploited people and how they asserted their interests and how they won ground in the eternal power struggle. They identify who in society have opposed them and observe the methods the opposition uses.
30 seconds.
Okay, so Chomsky, on the other hand, completely rejects it. He is what we call an idealist. So he has, let's use the idea of democracy. Most ideologists have a set of rights given to them by their, it's a set of rights, and basically they have imbibed the definition of bourgeoisie democracy and human rights without even living it. I mean, without even realizing it. For example, Chomsky once said that the United States is unprecedented. It's the freest country in the world, and I don't think there's freedom of speech.
That's time. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll continue later.
All right, Ben, 5-minute opening to you.
Sure. So I think that in an effort to make this an opening statement and save response for the response, I'll start out talking about why Chomsky is important, why I think he's a necessary starting point for the left, and what I think about the suggestion that we should outgrow him, or what that would necessarily mean. So I was looking again at a book that I read many years ago by the great Pakistani-born leftist Tariq Ali, called Bush in Babylon, the Recolonization of Iraq, where he has this nice line about Chomsky where he says, what his detractors in the US media do not realize is the main reason for Chomsky's enormous popularity and prestige in Asia and Latin America. Lots of non-privileged people are big fans of his, is not that he offers strategic or tactical advice, which he does not, but that he speaks a truth that is uncomfortable to those in power. In the world of today, that is a rarity. And of course, Ali is praising Chomsky there, but I do want to ground this by talking about one respect in which there might be some overlap between Esha and me, which is that first, obviously, I don't think, and I don't think Chomsky would think, that anybody should be above criticism, certainly. And I think there are some limitations to Chomsky's project. In other words, there are both some takes of his that I disagree with, but more importantly, I think that there are respects in which what he does, while important, isn't the only important thing that needs to be done. So, for example, a friend, the historian Daniel Bessner, talks about how Chomsky's generation of leftists came up in a situation in which the left, at least in countries like the United States, was completely powerless. So grappling with certain kinds of questions about how to change that isn't part of his project. And of course, that is something we need to fill in. But I think Chomsky represents a absolutely necessary starting point for the left. And I think that what I'm hearing that's framed as a suggestion that we outgrow him in many ways strikes me as a suggestion that actually we regress from that important starting point. So, what's important about that starting point? Well, I would point, for example, to an article I'd strongly recommend by Nathan Robinson called "Lessons from Chomsky," in which some of the things that he talks about, I'll just pick one for the sake of time, that Chomsky is very good at, is rejecting simple binary distinctions. So by that, I mean that Chomsky is ruthlessly honest about the nuances of the world that we live in and the situation that the left faces, but he does this honesty without sacrificing moral clarity. So he doesn't lie about or buy into simplistic and just implausible apologia for countries that happen to be in the U.S. crosshairs, but he has the moral clarity to realize that our overwhelming emphasis needs to be on talking about the crimes committed by our own government, both because the U.S. government happens to be the most important criminal entity in the world, and it's doing the most damage, but also because even if it was only doing 1% of the damage, that's the 1% that from that position that Esha was talking about in the heart of the beast, we're in the most position to do something about it. No, I'm at about 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Yes, thank you. But in any case, I think also his position, which I know is not Esha's main objection, but often comes up about the tactical dilemma that's presented by voting, also is founded on that important recognition of complexity, and that losing that complexity isn't outgrowing Chomsky, it's regressing from that necessary starting point.
So here's the truth about the system.